Have you ever had a moment standing in the middle of your own kitchen when the noise and laughter and constant movement around you suddenly made you wonder if you were really there at all? Or just part of the background, like the humming refrigerator or the stack of laundry waiting for attention? That's how it was for me on that rainy Wednesday evening, the kind where the sky turns the color of dishwater and everything inside feels a little damp, a little more fragile than usual. The Monroe house was alive with the usual chaos. Max's sneakers pounding up the stairs, Ella humming off-key as she drew hearts on her math homework, Owen's voice muted behind the bathroom door as he finished a late conference call. Chicken thighs sizzled in the oven, mixing with the scent of lemon and thyme, and underneath it all, the slow, steady ache of knowing that I, Lila, was the invisible glue holding it all together, even if no one noticed. I've always been the type to notice the little things. The way the tile grout is wearing thin by the sink, how Ella bites her lip when she's nervous, how Owen's shoulders tense up after a rough day at work. Maybe that's why the mess never really bothered me. Our home, 3 bedrooms, slightly faded yellow siding, yard full of dandelions and balls left out in the rain, wasn't perfect, but it was ours. On good days, I cherished the clutter, the art projects taped to the fridge, the muddy shoes lined up by the door, the faint scent of apples and cinnamon from Max's favorite after-school snack. But on days like this, when the rain seemed to seep into my bones and the list of things left undone grew longer by the hour, it all felt heavier, like I was the only one who saw it, the only one who cared. That evening, I moved through the kitchen on autopilot, chopping carrots, checking the timer, wiping up sticky spots from the counter with the corner of my sleeve. The kids were a whirlwind, Max bouncing a tennis ball against the wall, despite my repeated reminders. Ella sprawled out with colored pencils, her tongue poking from the corner of her mouth in concentration. I caught glimpses of Owen in the hallway, tie askew, eyes tired from too many spreadsheets. He gave me a distracted smile, the kind that never quite reached his eyes, and disappeared into his home office again. My phone buzzed on the counter, and for a moment, my heart leapt. Maybe a message from Marisol, my best friend, my anchor in the storm. I glanced at the screen. Let's talk tonight? Rough day. XM. I smiled. At least someone wanted to talk to me. While the chicken finished roasting, I set the table, smoothing wrinkles from the old blue tablecloth, arranging plates just so, a habit I couldn't break, even if no one cared but me. Overhead, the kitchen light flickered, casting uneven shadows on the walls. I could hear Helen's car pulling up outside, the crunch of tires on wet gravel unmistakable. My mother-in-law visited every Wednesday, rain or shine, armed with unsolicited advice and a critical eye. I braced myself as she knocked, 3 sharp raps that echoed through the house. "Lila, it's pouring out there. You'd think Owen would fix that gutter by now," Helen announced, bustling in with her umbrella dripping onto the welcome mat. She scanned the kitchen, lips pursed, eyes flicking over the dishes in the sink and the stack of mail by the phone. "Smells good, at least. Are the kids washed up? You know, routine is so important." "Yes, Helen," I said, forcing a smile. "They're just finishing homework." She didn't reply, just set her purse on the counter, right on top of Max's science project, and started unloading the groceries she'd brought, a habit equal parts helpful and undermining. I picked up real butter. "That margarine you buy isn't good for growing children." She said it loud enough for Owen to hear, though he didn't answer. Dinner was the usual mixture of chatter and tension, the clink of silverware and occasional outburst from Max about the unfairness of broccoli. Helen asked Ella about her grades, then turned to me. "Lila, have you spoken with Mrs. Garber about Ella's math? It's important not to let her fall behind." I bit my tongue. I'd already emailed the teacher twice and spent 2 hours the night before helping Ella with fractions, but I knew better than to argue. Owen just nodded, eyes on his plate. After dinner, as I loaded the dishwasher and wiped the counters, I caught a glimpse of myself in the kitchen window, a tired woman with hair escaping its bun, circles under her eyes, hands red from scrubbing. I wondered, not for the first time, if this was all anyone saw of me, if they saw me at all. The kids bickered in the hallway, their voices rising and falling like waves. Owen retreated to his office, mumbling something about an early meeting. Helen folded napkins at the table, her gaze sharp. "You know, Lila, when Owen was a boy, I kept a much stricter schedule. Maybe you should try making a chart for chores." I nodded, biting back a sigh. It was easier to let her advice wash over me, like water off a duck's back, than to argue. When Helen finally left, the house was quiet but not peaceful. The rain tapped against the windows, steady and unrelenting. I checked on the kids, Ella already asleep, clutching her sketchbook, Max muttering in his dreams. I tucked them in, pressing a kiss to each forehead, and stood for a moment in the hallway, listening to their breathing. Sometimes I wondered if they'd remember these ordinary nights, the ones that blurred together into years. Downstairs, I poured myself a cup of tea and settled onto the worn couch, phone in hand. The living room was cluttered with toys and laundry, but I barely noticed. The phone rang. Marisol's voice, warm and familiar, filled the quiet. "Hey, amiga. How's the Monroe madhouse tonight?" she teased, and I laughed, the sound surprising me. With Marisol, I could breathe. We talked about everything and nothing. The kids, her latest shift at the hospital, the recipe I'd tried and burned. She listened, really listened, asking about Ella's drawing, about Owen's work, about how I was holding up. I didn't tell her how invisible I felt. Not really. I didn't mention the ache in my chest when Helen dismissed me, or the way Owen never seemed to see the effort it took to keep everything running. Instead, I told her about Max's science project and Ella's new obsession with Greek mythology. "You do so much, Lila. More than most people realize," Marisol said quietly. There was something in her voice, a heaviness that made me pause. "Are you okay?" I asked, and she hesitated, just for a heartbeat. "Yeah, just tired. Long shift. You know how it is," she said, voice brightening, but I knew her too well. There was something she wasn't saying. We talked for another half hour, sharing stories, laughing about the time we tried to bake bread together in college and nearly set off the dorm fire alarm. With her, I could remember who I was before I became someone's wife, someone's mother, someone's daughter-in-law. I was just Lila, messy, stubborn, hopeful. After we hung up, I sat in the dark for a while, listening to the rain. The house was still, the kind of stillness that settles after a storm, when you're too tired to move but too restless to sleep. I thought about the day, the way Owen barely looked at me, the way Helen's words stung, the way the kids took my presence for granted. I thought about Marisol, her laughter edged with sadness, and wondered what secret she was carrying, and whether it had anything to do with me. The truth is, I'd always felt second best next to Marisol. She was the beautiful one, the confident one, the nurse who saved lives and knew what to say in every situation. I loved her fiercely, but sometimes I envied her too, the way people seemed to gravitate toward her, the way she made everything look easy. My life felt small in comparison, measured out in meals cooked and socks folded and arguments refereed. Some nights I wanted to scream. Most nights, I just kept going. I don't know when I first started feeling invisible. Maybe it was after Max was born, when the days blurred together in a haze of feedings and laundry and Owen's late nights at the office. Maybe it was the first time Helen criticized my parenting in front of the neighbors, or the 100th time Owen forgot to say thank you. Maybe it was just the slow erosion of self that comes from being needed by everyone but seen by no one. But I wasn't resentful. Not really. I loved my family. I just wanted them to see me, to notice the little things, the way I remembered everyone's favorite snack, the way I stayed up late helping with projects, the way I held it all together, even when it felt like the world was falling apart. I wanted recognition, not for the big things, but for the quiet, everyday sacrifices that kept our lives running smoothly. That night, I sat in the living room, cradling my tea, and made a promise to myself. Tomorrow, I would try again. I would get up early, pack lunches, sign permission slips, smile through Helen's advice, and listen for Owen's footsteps in the hall. I would keep showing up, even if no one noticed. Because that's what mothers do, isn't it? We love, we give, we hope. And yet, as I turned off the lights and climbed the stairs to bed, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to change, that the secret Marisol carried, the one she was too afraid to say out loud, was the very thing I'd feared all along. I lay in bed, listening to the rain, and wondered if tomorrow would be the day everything I thought I knew would come undone. But for now, I settled under the covers, listening to the quiet hum of the house I'd built, and hoped, just for a moment, that someone, somewhere, saw me. The next morning, the rain had finally stopped, leaving the world outside glazed and glistening. I woke to the soft slap of Owen's feet on the hardwood. He was always up first, moving through our home with the quiet deliberation of someone who prefers the world orderly and predictable. By the time I pulled on my robe and padded into the kitchen, he was already pouring cereal for Max and tapping his phone, half listening to the local news. The smell of coffee was sharp and comforting, but I barely tasted it as I sipped, automatically running through the day's mental checklist. Ella shuffled in a few minutes later, hair tangled and eyes still dreamy with sleep, clutching the sketchbook she carried everywhere. She mumbled a good morning, and I smoothed her hair back, feeling that familiar ache, a mingling of pride and worry. Max was already chattering about a science project, his energy like a small storm. I handed Owen his travel mug, brushing his hand with mine, but he was looking past me, distracted. Don't forget today's our anniversary, I reminded him, keeping my voice casual. He looked up, startled, and for a split second I saw regret flicker across his face. Right. I'll text you later, okay? And just like that, he was out the door, the moment slipping away as quickly as it had come. After the kids left for school, I cleaned the kitchen, wiped fingerprints from the fridge, and tried to shake off the heavy feeling in my chest. I called Marisol as I folded laundry, needing the comfort of her steady voice. She picked up on the third ring, sounding a little breathless. Lila! Sorry, I almost missed you. My shift ran late last night. I told her about Owen forgetting our anniversary, trying to laugh it off, but my voice caught. She was gentle, offering sympathy, but she seemed distracted, her words trailing off at times. I almost asked if she was okay, but the moment passed, and we promised to meet for coffee next week. At noon, Helen arrived sweeping through the front door with her usual air of brisk authority. Her perfume, something floral and overwhelming, announced her before I saw her. She carried a casserole because it's always best if I bring something just in case. She set it on the counter, her eyes immediately scanning the room, cataloging the clutter, the crumbs, the pile of shoes by the door. Lila, dear, have you thought about reorganizing the pantry? It would make everything so much easier to find. I smiled tightly, biting back the urge to defend my system, and offered her tea. We sat together at the table, watching the clock until it was time to pick up the kids. Helen launched into stories of Owen's childhood, always with the faintest hint that things were better back then, that I should be grateful for what I have. She asked about Ella's grades, Max's manners, Owen's career, never about me. When I mentioned my volunteer work at the library, she nodded, distracted. That's nice, dear. But don't overextend yourself. These children need your full attention. The words stung, though I tried not to let it show. After school, Ella burst through the door, face flushed and eyes shining with something between excitement and dread. Max trailed behind, sticky with dirt from the playground. I barely had time to ask about their day when my phone buzzed, a message from Mrs. Callahan, Ella's teacher. Could I stop by after drop-off tomorrow? She wanted to discuss a concerning incident. My stomach twisted, and I glanced at Ella, who had suddenly gone quiet, her fingers worrying the edge of her sketchbook. Dinner that night was tense, Helen's gaze flicking between me and Owen, who was unusually silent. I set the table, served the casserole, tried to coax conversation. Max talked over everyone, and Ella barely touched her food. After Helen left, Owen retreated to his office, claiming work. I cleaned up alone, the house too quiet except for the distant hum of the dishwasher. That night, after the kids were in bed, I stared at the ceiling, listening to the rain start up again. I thought about how easily joy could slip through my fingers, how one careless word, one forgotten anniversary, could leave me feeling invisible. I thought about Marisol's hesitation on the phone, the way her voice had faltered. Was it possible she was struggling too, hiding her own cracks behind that gentle smile? The next day, I walked Ella to school in silence. She clung to my hand, eyes fixed on the cracks in the sidewalk. Did something happen yesterday? I asked gently. She hesitated, then shook her head. I got in trouble, but it wasn't my fault. I squeezed her hand, promising we'd figure it out. Mrs. Callahan called me into her classroom after the bell. She was kind but firm. Apparently Ella had been caught drawing on the back of another student's homework, a distraction during math time. She's so creative, but sometimes she needs more structure, Mrs. Callahan said, looking at me in that way teachers have, half sympathetic, half judging. By the time I got home, I was exhausted. The guilt hung heavy. Was I failing as a mother? Was Helen right? Was Owen disappointed in me? I called Marisol again, desperate for her warmth, but she didn't answer. Later she texted me, "Sorry, something came up. Can we talk tomorrow?" I typed back, "Of course," with a smiley face, but my hands were shaking. That afternoon, Owen came home early, but instead of joining us in the living room, he hovered near the doorway, eyes darting from me to Ella. "Your mother called," he said quietly. "She's worried about Ella's behavior. Maybe you should, I don't know, be a bit more strict?" I bristled, the unfairness of it tightening my chest. "I'm doing my best," I whispered, but he was already picking up his phone again, lost to another world. The days blurred together in a haze of chores and small defeats. I cooked, cleaned, listened, comforted, stretched myself thinner and thinner. Helen's visits became more frequent, each time bringing fresh criticism hidden beneath concern. Ella withdrew, her drawings turning dark and crowded. Max lashed out, craving attention. Owen became a ghost in his own home, present but unreachable. I missed Marisol fiercely, but even she seemed distant. Her texts curt, her voice on voicemail tired and far away. The final straw came at the school open house. I'd spent the afternoon coaxing Ella into her best dress, wrangling Max into clean shoes, baking a batch of brownies for the bake sale. Helen insisted on coming, arriving early to help, but mostly to supervise. The school gym buzzed with parents and teachers, kids running wild. I tried to keep Max close, but he slipped away, only to reappear minutes later, face smudged with chocolate, pursued by a stern-faced teacher. In the middle of the chaos, Mrs. Callahan cornered me, her tone low but pointed. "I hope you'll have a word with Ella about staying focused. She's very bright, but we need her to participate, not distract." I felt eyes on me, other parents, teachers, Helen's icy gaze. My cheeks burned. "Of course," I murmured, too aware of the judgment in the room. As we left, Helen's voice was sharp. "You know, Lila, perhaps if you spent less time at the library and more time at home, these things wouldn't happen." The words landed like stones. I bit my tongue, holding back tears until we were in the car. Ella stared out the window, Max kicked the seat, and Owen drove in silence. That night, I collapsed onto my bed, too tired to even cry. I stared at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would notice if I just disappeared for a day or two. I missed Marisol so much in that moment, it hurt. I thought about all the times she'd picked me up when I was falling. Her jokes, her warmth, the way she always made me feel seen. But now, I couldn't shake the feeling that she was slipping away too, lost in problems she wouldn't share. The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter in Owen's careful handwriting. "Sorry about last night. Let's try again soon. Love you." I stared at it, unmoved. It felt like a leftover, an afterthought. Later, while folding laundry, the phone rang. This time it was Marisol. Her voice was quiet, small. "Can we talk? In person?" My heart pounded. I agreed, and we planned to meet at the park that afternoon. The hours crawled by. I replayed every conversation, every moment I'd missed. Had I failed her as a friend too? When I arrived at the park, Marisol was already there, sitting on the bench beneath the old maple tree, her hands wrapped around a coffee cup gone cold. She looked up as I approached, and for a moment, the old warmth flickered in her eyes. But something else was there too. Fear, maybe, or sorrow. We sat in silence for a while, watching the kids on the playground. Finally, she spoke. "Lila, I need to tell you something. I should have told you sooner, but I was scared." Her voice broke on the last word, and I reached for her hand, my own trembling. Before she could say more, my phone buzzed. Another message from Owen. "Don't forget dinner with my mom tonight." I wanted to throw the phone into the grass to scream. Instead, I squeezed Marisol's hand, willing her to go on. But she hesitated. Her eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. "I'm sorry, Lila. I can't today. But soon, I promise." She got up, hugging her coat around her, and walked away, leaving me shivering on the bench, 1,000 questions burning inside. The walk home felt endless. The sky was heavy, threatening rain again, and I felt raw, scraped thin by worry and love and fear. The house was noisy when I finally stepped inside. Max and Ella arguing, Owen on the phone, Helen's voice rising in the kitchen. I took a deep breath and walked into the chaos, determined to hold everything together for one more night. But as I lay awake later, listening to the murmur of my family, I realized I couldn't keep doing this alone. I needed help. I needed someone to see me, to really see me, the way Marisol always had, before her own troubles pulled her away. I promised myself that tomorrow I would try to reach her again, that I would keep fighting, for my family and for myself. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wondered whether your sacrifices matter, trust me, you're not alone. There's so much more to this story, and I hope you'll stay with me as I try to find my way through it. If you want to hear what happens next, about Marisol's secret, and what it means for all of us, don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Your support means more than you can imagine, and I can't wait to share the rest of this journey with you. That Saturday morning, I woke up before anyone else, the habit of a mother who spent years chasing quiet moments that belonged to her alone. The sky was just beginning to pale, the world outside still wrapped in the hush of dawn. I sat at the edge of our bed, watching Owen sleep, his mouth slightly open, chest rising and falling. Sometimes I envied how easily he could shut out the world, how he could drift away from all the things that clung to me, even in my dreams. I pressed my hand against my heart, feeling its steady thud, and wondered if anyone noticed the way I carried everyone's weight. Downstairs, I moved through the house in silence, putting on coffee, straightening up the stray shoes and backpacks, folding the blanket Max left on the couch. I paused at the kitchen table, tracing my finger over the pale ring where Helen's mug had left a stain the night before. Her words echoed in my mind, sharp, effortless, always finding the softest part of me. If you just paid a little more attention, Lila, maybe Ella wouldn't have so much trouble at school. When I was raising children, the kettle whistled, sharp and sudden. I poured the coffee and sat, cradling the mug in both hands, the warmth seeping into my palms. My phone buzzed. Marisol's name. I stared at it for a moment, hesitating. Lately, even her messages made something in my chest twist. She'd been distant for weeks, her replies clipped, her eyes shadowed during our brief encounters. I'd found myself replaying every conversation, wondering if I'd said something wrong, if the ache in my life was leaking into hers. Morning, I typed. The dots danced for a moment. Then, can we meet today? Please. I read it again, the edge in her words unmistakable. I thought of all the times she'd rescued me with a joke or a quiet hug, the way she'd always listened, never judging even when I'd confessed my darkest thoughts. I owed her that much, and more. The house woke up around me, noise blooming in every corner. Max barreled into the kitchen, hair wild, face still creased with sleep. Mom, can we have pancakes? Ella followed, clutching her sketchbook, eyes already wary. She'd been so quiet since the school incident, her spark dulled by Helen's pointed sighs and Owen's distracted attempts at reassurance. I made breakfast on autopilot, pouring batter, flipping pancakes, fielding Max's endless questions in Ella's silence. Owen appeared, pressed and ready for his weekend run, barely glancing at me as he muttered, "I'll be back in an hour. Don't forget we're supposed to drop by Mom's later." I watched his back as he left, the door closing with a soft click. My hands tightened around the spatula. Sometimes I wanted to scream, "Do you see me at all?" After breakfast, I told the kids I needed to run an errand. Ella barely looked up, and Max was already lost in his game. I grabbed my bag and slipped out, the cool morning air biting at my cheeks. The walk to Marisol's apartment was short but felt impossibly long, my thoughts swirling. What could be so urgent? Her building was quiet, the hallway smelling faintly of bleach and old carpet. I knocked, heart thumping. When she opened the door, I barely recognized her. Marisol's hair was pulled back messily, her eyes red-rimmed, face drawn and pale. She gestured for me to come in, and I followed her to the small sunlit kitchen. 2 mugs sat on the counter, one chipped, one stained with lipstick. She sat heavily, folding her arms over the table, staring at her hands. For a long moment, we said nothing. I wanted to reach out, but the space between us felt impossibly wide. Finally, she whispered, "Lila, I need to tell you something. I should have told you weeks ago. I didn't know how." I waited, every muscle in my body tensed. The silence pressed in, thick and electric. She looked up, and her voice trembled. "I've been so jealous of you. I know you think I have everything together, but I don't. My life it's falling apart. I lost my job last month." She swallowed, voice breaking. "And I didn't tell you. I lied to you, Lila. I let you believe I was still working those late shifts because I was ashamed. I see you with your family, and it just hurts. You have everything I wish I could have." Shock rippled through me, but beneath it was something sharper. Guilt, confusion, a flicker of anger. "Why didn't you tell me?" I asked, my voice smaller than I wanted. She looked at me, tears gathering in her eyes. "Because you're the strong one. You always keep going, no matter how much people take you for granted. I thought if I told you, you'd see how weak I am." She wiped her nose, her hands shaking. I reached for her hand, squeezing it. "Marisol, you're not weak. You've carried me more times than I can count. Why would you ever think—" She pulled her hand back. "Because Owen offered to help me. He offered money. He's been checking in on me, bringing groceries. He didn't want to tell you. He said you had enough to worry about." The room spun. My breath caught, 1,000 sharp memories clicking into place. Owen's late nights, the way he flinched when I asked about his phone, the sudden silences when Marisol's name came up. My mind raced, piecing together every small omission, every strange tension. I felt blindsided, my heart pounding in my chest. "Why didn't either of you tell me?" My voice was barely above a whisper, but I could hear the tremor in it. She looked away, shame darkening her face. "I begged him not to. I didn't want you to think less of me. I didn't want to come between you." I stared at her, pain and anger warring inside me. "But you did come between us. You both did, by keeping secrets." She squeezed her eyes shut, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Lila. I'm so sorry. I couldn't lose you too." The words hung in the air, raw and heavy. I wanted to shout, to cry, to run, but I sat frozen, trapped by the enormity of her confession. I thought about all the times I'd envied her strength, her confidence, the way she seemed to glide through life while I struggled to keep my head above water. And now, here she was, crumbling in front of me. Something inside me broke, a dam that had held back years of unspoken hurts and invisible sacrifices. I thought of Owen, of the distance between us, of the way he'd quietly tried to help Marisol while leaving me to carry everything else. I thought of Helen, of Ella, of Max, of every time I'd swallowed my pain for the sake of peace. I stood, my chair scraping loudly against the tile. Marisol flinched, but I forced myself to speak calmly. I need to go. I need time to think. She nodded, tears streaming down her face, her shoulders hunched with shame. I walked home in a daze, the world blurring around me. The sun was higher now, shining too brightly, mocking the storm inside me. I let myself in, closing the door quietly behind me. The house was loud with the sounds of the kids playing, Owen's voice drifting in from the living room. He looked up as I entered, his face unreadable. Everything okay? I stared at him, searching for something, an apology, an explanation, anything that might make this pain make sense. We need to talk, I said, my voice trembling. He followed me into the kitchen. I waited until the kids' laughter faded upstairs before I let myself speak. I know about Marisol, I said. I know you've been helping her. I know you kept it from me. For a moment, I saw something like relief flicker across his face, but it was gone in an instant, replaced by guilt. I just wanted to help, he said quietly. She asked me not to say anything. I didn't want to burden you. Burden me, my voice cracked. Do you have any idea how alone I've felt? How invisible? And you thought it was better to keep secrets? He looked away, rubbing his hands together. I'm sorry. I really am. I didn't want to make things worse. I thought I was protecting you. I laughed, a harsh, brittle sound. Protecting me from what? The truth? Do you even see what that does to someone? To our family? He reached for me, but I stepped back. I needed air, space, anything but more suffocating silence. I spent the rest of the day moving through the house like a ghost. I did laundry, made lunch, helped Ella with her homework, all the while feeling like I was watching my life from a distance. Owen hovered, unsure, and the kids sensed something was wrong, their voices too loud, their laughter forced. That evening, Helen came by, sweeping in with her usual cloud of perfume and criticism. She took one look at my face and frowned. Are you feeling well, Lila? I wanted to laugh, to tell her everything, to let her see the cracks, but I just nodded and offered her tea. She sat at the table, watching me closely as I moved around the kitchen. You know, sometimes I think you take on too much. You should ask for help. I set the mug in front of her, my hands shaking. Sometimes I wish someone would offer before I have to ask. She blinked, surprised by the edge in my voice. For a moment, the mask slipped, and I saw something softer in her eyes. Recognition, maybe even regret. She reached out, her hand warm on mine. We all need to be seen, Lila, even you. I held her gaze, the silence stretching between us. For the first time, I wondered if she'd ever felt invisible, if she'd ever swallowed her pride just to keep things running smoothly. After Helen left, the house settled into its nighttime rhythm, dishes clinking, water running, the kids' voices drifting down the hall. Owen found me in the living room, his face tired, defeated. I'm sorry, Lila, he said again, voice raw. I should have told you. I should have seen you. I looked at him, really looked, and saw all the ways we'd failed each other. The secret he'd kept for Marisol wasn't born of betrayal, but of fear. Fear of adding to my burden. Fear of failing as a husband. Fear of what the truth might do to us. I'm tired, I whispered. I'm tired of carrying everything alone. He knelt in front of me, taking my hands in his. Let me help, please. I want to do better. I want you to know how much you matter. The words broke something open inside me, and I let myself cry for the first time in months. He held me, whispering apologies, promises, hopes. For once, I let him carry some of my pain. Later, as I tucked the kids into bed, Ella hugged me tightly, her voice muffled against my stomach. Are you okay, Mom? I kissed her hair, breathing in the scent of shampoo and crayons. I'm better now, I promise. That night, I called Marisol. She answered on the first ring, her voice shaky. Lila? We'll get through this, I said softly. But no more secrets. Not from each other. She sobbed, relief and gratitude pouring through the phone. Thank you. Thank you for forgiving me. As I lay in bed beside Owen, listening to the gentle hum of our house settling, I realized the secret I'd feared the most wasn't that I'd lost my friend or my husband's trust. It was the fear that I didn't matter, that I could disappear and no one would notice. But I did matter. I was seen. I was loved, imperfectly, messily, but truly. And in that quiet, hopeful darkness, I finally let myself believe it. There is a strange weight that comes with secrets, especially the ones we tell ourselves to survive. For so long, I'd moved through my days almost automatically, holding together the seams of our family life with invisible thread, afraid that if I stopped or let myself be seen, everything would unravel. After the night Marisol told me her truth, her secret, the very one I'd feared the most, I found myself standing at the kitchen window the next morning, clutching a mug of coffee gone cold, watching the rain trace uncertain paths down the glass. My reflection looked pale and tired, but for the first time in a long while, I really saw myself. Marisol's words echoed in my mind on a loop. The confession that she envied my life, that her own sense of having it all together was only a careful performance. She admitted feeling adrift, exhausted by loneliness in the quiet of her apartment, burdened by unspoken disappointments and an ache for belonging she couldn't name. The secret I'd always feared, that maybe I was never enough, that I was invisible even to my closest friend, turned out to be something else entirely. Marisol had seen me all along, and she'd been afraid of losing me too. That morning, as the house slowly woke around me, I thought about all the small daily choices I'd made, packing lunches, folding socks, biting my tongue when Helen's comments stung, smoothing the world for my children. I realized I'd been waiting for someone to hand me a medal, to say, thank you, to notice the million ways I gave of myself unseen. But maybe, I wondered, I could start by seeing myself. I set my mug down and walked into the living room, where the kids were already bickering over the remote. Owen glanced up from his phone, distracted, his brow furrowed. For a heartbeat, I wanted to retreat, to slip back into the comfort of invisibility. But something in me shifted. I cleared my throat. Family meeting, I said, surprising myself. The words hung in the air, unfamiliar. The kids groaned, but I stood firm. Owen blinked, then set his phone aside. I took a breath. I know things have felt a little off lately, I began, meeting their eyes in turn. I want us to talk, not about chores or school or who forgot to put the milk back in the fridge. About us, how we're feeling, what we need from each other. Max looked up, curiosity flickering across his face. Ella tucked her feet beneath her, suddenly quiet. Owen straightened, uncertainty in his gaze. I spoke honestly, not as the fixer or the peacekeeper, but as myself. I told them about feeling overwhelmed sometimes, about the loneliness that can sneak in even when a house is full. I admitted that I missed being noticed, not for the things I did, but for who I was. My voice trembled, but I kept going. To my surprise, they listened. Max mumbled that he missed our Saturday pancake breakfasts, like when we didn't have to rush everywhere. Ella said she felt like everyone was too busy to draw with her anymore. Owen cleared his throat, awkward but sincere, and apologized for being distant. He admitted he'd been stressed at work and hadn't realized how much he'd shut me out. It wasn't a magical fix, but it was a start. We agreed to set aside Sunday afternoons as family time. No screens, no work, just us. The kids lit up at the idea, tossing out suggestions, board games, baking cookies, walks in the park. Owen squeezed my hand beneath the table, a silent promise. Later that day, I called Marisol. My heart pounded, unsure of what to say after her confession. But when she answered, her voice was gentle, as if she'd been waiting for me to call. I'm sorry, she said quietly. I should have told you sooner. You always seemed so strong, Lila. I didn't want to add to your burden. I laughed, the sound shaky but honest. We've both been pretending, haven't we? Trying to be strong for everyone else. She sniffed, and I pictured her curled on her sofa, the soft blue blanket around her shoulders. Maybe we can try being honest instead, even when it's messy. Especially when it's messy, I agreed. We promised to be there for each other, not as perfect versions, but as real women, flaws and all. That night, she joined us for dinner. The kids made a show of setting the table. Owen uncorked a bottle of wine, and Marisol brought her famous tres leches cake. The meal was loud and imperfect, laughter overlapping with spilled milk and burnt rolls, but it felt right. For the first time in months, I felt seen, not just as a wife or a mother, but as Lila. Over the next weeks, things didn't suddenly become easy. Helen still dropped by with her sharp observations, but I found the courage to speak up gently, to set boundaries. I let Owen into my world a bit more, sharing not just the logistics of our life, but the emotional weight too. Some days, the loneliness crept back, but I no longer let it go unnamed. I reached for my people, my family, my friend, and let them reach for me in return. One evening, after the kids were asleep, Owen found me folding laundry in the quiet hush of the hallway. He sat beside me on the floor, picked up a towel, and began folding. "I've been thinking about what you said," he murmured. "I want you to know I see you, Lila. I'm sorry it took so long." I looked at him, really looked, and saw the man I'd married, weary and imperfect, but trying. I leaned into his shoulder, letting the silence stretch between us, soft and full. It's funny how recognition can come in the smallest moments, like when Ella slipped a note into my purse, "Thank you for loving me, even when I'm grumpy," or when Max hugged me tight and whispered, "You make the best dinosaur-shaped sandwiches," or when Marisol texted a silly meme on a rough day and we laughed until we cried. I began to notice the ways I'd always been enough, not because of what I did, but because of who I was. I let go of the idea that appreciation had to be loud or grand. Sometimes, it was as simple as the warmth of a hand in mine, the echo of laughter in a cluttered kitchen, the quiet relief of being real with someone who truly sees you. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever wondered whether the small, ordinary love you give really matters, let me tell you, it does. It ripples out in ways you can't always see, shaping the hearts of the people you love. Sometimes, the bravest thing we can do is ask to be seen, to risk honesty even when it feels uncomfortable. And sometimes the people who matter will surprise you with how much they've been waiting to see you too. Thank you for sitting with me through this story, my story. If you've ever stood in your kitchen at dusk, hands still damp from dishwater, and wondered if you matter, I hope you know you do. I hope you know you're not alone. And if this story touched you, even in a small way, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Maybe you have your own story, of friendship, of sacrifice, of the quiet courage it takes to keep loving, day after day. Share it with us, so none of us has to feel invisible. If you found comfort or inspiration here, please consider liking this video, subscribing to our little community, and turning on notifications so you don't miss the next story. Our lives are made up of these small, imperfect moments, and together, we can remind each other that they matter. So here's to the unseen glue, the quiet strengths, and the courage to let ourselves be seen. I'm Lila Monroe, and I see you. Thank you for listening, for caring, for being part of my story.